Welcome back to Building the Groundwork podcast. Today, have a special guest, Bryan Peters, founder of Advanced Trac Equipment. I've known Bryan for, I would say, 4 years, maybe even 5 when we first met, but excited to finally get him on the podcast. He was somewhat of our white whale, trying to get him on and get him penciled in on a specific date. So welcome, Bryan.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be on.
Good deal. Why don't you tell us a little bit about Advanced Trac, and so you'll do a much better job than I on what Advanced Trac does, what you're built around. Go for it.
Yeah, we're an independent equipment dealer servicing contractors here in Texas. And what really kind of sets us apart from other independent dealers is we're looking to be a holistic solution for the contractors and customers that we work for. We want to offer, the sales aspect of it, the rental aspect, which are all kind of, in my opinion, like the boilerplate side of the business, right? It's a big area of where revenue comes from, but the service side of things and the management side of things is what really differentiates ourselves. We're not afraid to go work on our customers' equipment. And we're not afraid to help them manage their fleets. So that's kind of what separates us from some of the other independent dealers that are in our market.
Nice. And Advanced Trac, you started how long ago?
We started technically the business was founded in July of 2020. We started in October of 2020 is when we hit the ground running.
And if I remember correctly, your family started in the rental business?
Yeah, so my family had a business that started in California in 2000, and then they moved it to Texas, or I guess I should say they started a Texas operation in, I believe it was 2013 or 2014. And then in 2018, I came out and joined their operation there. And then in 2020, we just had our visions just weren't aligned, and I had always had this desire to start my own business and do something from the ground up. I'm not exactly sure why, because it's a lot of work, but it just was something that was kind of embedded in me, and it's been exciting. It's been a heck of an experience, and nothing I would trade it for.
And so it's neat that you had the desire to start your own business, because that is a very difficult journey. But there must have been something, because there's a lot of rental companies, right? There's a ton. There has to have been something there where this is a gap in the market, or this is something that I believe strongly in that we could do differently. What was that for you?
Honestly, I think what changed, I don't know that I actually felt that way. I don't know that in the very beginning there was something where I was like, I'm going to be different than other companies. It was more of like, I saw a need, obviously, for rental businesses. You see them, they're everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And so to me, I was kind of just filling another gap, right? Like it wasn't, in my opinion, I didn't start it out like, oh, I've got this planned, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to bring this value proposition. And I think what we realized as we started the business was, number one, we couldn't get funding to go buy equipment. So it forced us to go down some other paths. Number one, management, and number two, brokering and buying and selling equipment. And so when those opportunities came up, I started to realize, okay, this is how we could potentially differentiate ourselves from the normal strict heavy equipment rental company, right? If we can offer the sales aspect and help our customers manage their fleet, I think that's when it started. I started to put the pieces together of how this could potentially be different and how we could provide a different value than some of our competitors. And I think now, as we've kind of aged through this process and matured through this process a bit, we really see that as a need now. And we're focused heavily on relationships, right? So we want to be relationship focused and provide that, like I said earlier, that kind of holistic package to helping contractors manage their fleet.
Interesting. So you didn't. So you started just brokering equipment. When you say
Yeah.
manage, what does that mean? Managing
So
equipment.
so what we started doing, as a matter of fact, it was our very first customer. They called me up and said, "Hey, I love where your head's at, what your vision is. I need some help, and I need you to just come up here." I was down in Austin at the time, and I said, "Hey, come up to Dallas, meet with me, and let's just talk about what this could potentially like look like." And I was going into it thinking, "Hey, they've got some machines they want to sell or something like that," right? I was not going into it thinking anything along the lines of consulting, right? I
Mhm.
was thinking sales or something like that, right? And so we got up here, and I sat down with the owner and a few of the members of his leadership team, and we started talking about kind of where their needs were with their fleet. They were struggling with some of their dealer relationships. They were struggling to understand what their costs were. They were struggling to get repairs done on their machines. And so I started kind of connecting the dots for them a little bit and found that there was value in doing so. Right.
Mhm.
And so what they offered as kind of a consulting deal for me really opened my eyes to there's other companies just like this that need this help as well. And now we've consulted with several different contractors in that regard. And the management piece is kind of taking on a different shape now. What we're really trying to move towards, it's kind of been a 2025 and early 2026 goal, is to offer through some other software, but offer a monitored fleet management relationship, basically like a fractional fleet manager,
Mhm.
to where we can have access to their fleet through a program. And we can see if there's needs for service, whatever else, and either help them schedule that with their preferred dealer or with us.
Mm, interesting. And then I totally get it. Like when you're starting from scratch, especially if your goal is to be in rental, you don't have, it's probably hard to get a $10 million credit line to go buy fleet that you can rent. But when you were able to start the rental side of the business, what did that look like? What did you start with? Because this is always fascinating to me is that all companies start from the same place. They start at zero. They don't have a
Yes.
customer and they get their first customer. So what was the earliest version of Advanced Track with rental? How many pieces?
Yeah, so we started with 5 pieces of equipment. What we did is we ended up going out and getting an SBA loan, and we just started trying to buy up here the
Mhm.
best that we could. And I knew that I wanted to at the end of uh, the earliest view of advanced track from the rental perspective was really servicing those closest to us, right? So we lived out in a suburb of Austin that has a
Mhm.
lot of ranch properties around it, and there was a big need for people who had skid steers and mini excavators and stuff like that, right? So that they
Mhm.
could go clear a road at their ranch or dig to put a water line in from a well, whatever it was, the clear land, whatever. And so we started with that. But as it took a few of those rentals for me to realize, like which came from renting basically specifically to contractors. I wanted to go back to that. Like
Mhm.
that was something that that left me feeling more fulfilled. And I'm also studied construction management and worked for contractors, so I felt like I understood the relationship and the needs a little bit better than the
Mhm.
needs of like a DIYer on the weekend trying to,
Sure.
rent a machine. So that was kind of the big thing for us. Like as we started, we kind of started with those smaller machines, and we really ran that way for a couple of years,
Oh,
or about
wow.
a year and a half, and then the kind of the floodgates open, and we had more opportunities with bigger machines, et cetera, and basically took it from there.
So I think people in the industry kind of read between the lines when you say like when your early clientele is, you know, do it yourselfers. We're talking about like daily rentals, weekly
Yep,
rentals, not
that's right.
not the 6 month rental
That's exactly
contract,
right.
right?
Yep, that's exactly right. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'd go out for a day and it would look like it had been out for 6 months because they didn't know what they were doing. And I I've always been told like, hey, don't fall in love with the equipment. And it's like, it's way too late for that. I fell in love with equipment at a very early age. There's not any reversing that for me. And so when you spend money on an asset that costs, 60, 70, $120,000, whatever it might have been,
Mhm.
and it comes back and it has 150 or 200 hours on the hour meter and it looks like it does, you're like, man, how did we get here? What were these guys doing? Right. And then it's
Mhm.
replace decals, clean it all up. And it's all part of the deal. But that was kind of frustrating. And what I saw is like most contractors, I'm not going to speak for all of them because I know there are some that definitely are hard on real gear. But most contractors take the time to understand, like, because they own those assets themselves, they
Mhm.
understand the cost of it and they understand at least to a surface level what the cost to repair those assets is, right? So that's I think one of the reasons too that kind of tugged us away from the DIYers and more towards the contractor base for our customers.
So in those early days, how many employees at Advanced Track?
Just me.
So, and this is where I wanted to go with it was it's really hard to get your first couple of customers, brutally difficult. But in the business that you were doing, like there's so much logistics that have to happen after you get the deal, right? Like
Yep.
delivering the equipment. When it does come back, you mentioned like it was not in the best condition. Like who's rental prepping it to go back out? Yeah,
Yeah,
that's you, or you're
that was
hiring
me.
someone else? Wow.
Yeah, so when we started the rental piece of it, I had a 3/4 ton diesel pickup and a gooseneck trailer, and I'd pick the machines up from the dealer, take them to the branding shop where we put our wraps on them, and then they'd go out on rent. I'd deliver them, and when they'd come back, I'd clean them up. We rented a little yard space from actually a water delivery service in
Mhm.
Dripping Springs, and yeah, I would sit out there and pressure wash. And I've got great pictures of my kids and my wife out there. My kids were, I think my oldest at the time was 2, and our youngest was like, couldn't even walk, right? He was
Mhm.
crawling around out there. And so it was a pretty awesome experience for us and our family. It was a lot of work but it was very, very, very rewarding. And sometimes I think back on those times, I'm like, man, what I wouldn't give for my kids to be that age again and for me to be back in that situation because you take it for granted, like always kind of being in hot pursuit of the next thing. And it's important to enjoy those moments.
That's a common theme, although I will say selfishly, like, I'm like, "No, I don't wanna go back to to those early days." I wanna be able to put my feet up on the desk a little bit here.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
So, that's a really cool story. So where does Advanced Track look like now, today? With the fleet size, so you're kind of explained how you were able to graduate to the next level of customer, after a couple years, which is a long time,
Yeah,
frankly.
it was a long time. It was more of a gradual progression. We started re-renting some equipment to other rental companies, as a way of kind of trying really just to make sure the revenue was in place.
Mhm,
And at the same time, I took a full-time job up in Dallas with the contractor up here. And so there was a lot of things kind of happening. So that transition period, it took some time. But in 2023, we hired Tyler, who's
mhm,
our business development manager, and he has just completely transformed the business. So there's 4 employees now, including myself. We've got a 3-acre yard down in San Marcos, which
mm,
is kind of split right between San Antonio and Austin. We've got a great customer base in San Antonio. We're working on our customer base in Austin. Um, and our fleet has just the dynamics of our fleet has changed drastically. We've sold skid steers. I mean, we still have a few, but we've sold skid steers, sold some of our mini excavators, and we've just gone all in on the larger earth moving equipment. That's what I grew up in. Tyler has a lot of experience in that
mhm,
area as well, and so it just made sense for us to do that. We've got about 22 machines now, and then
nice.
we've got some great partnerships with some wholesale re-rental companies that's all they do is just rent to rental companies. So keeps us able to service our customers' needs.
Yeah, that's great growth. And that is also interesting. Like you have very interesting perspective. As you mentioned, you worked for a customer. So you've been able to see it from both sides of the coin. Is there anything, what would you say is there a misunderstanding or something from like the vendor side that they're missing out on when they're trying to call on customers? Like from being on that side?
I think that one thing that I've noticed with certain vendors, and I think I will say like this applies to anything that you do.
Mhm.
Um, but I think certain people show up way, way, way too much, right? Like I understand that the squeaky wheel gets the grease, but and that mentality, but there becomes a point where it's like it gets annoying, right? And you're busy as you know on the contractor side of things, like you're busy, right?
Mhm.
And so to know, and there's people who know how to do it very, very well, right? Where it's a touch and they understand that, hey, you're busy and I'm, you know, and those people I see them as, you know, they tend to be more successful at their job, right? Whereas like there'll be people, and I have a few freight brokers that do this with us because the second that you say anything on LinkedIn about you hauling equipment, the next thing you know, there's about 50 million freight brokers that are trying to, hey, I want I want to earn your business. How
I
do I
want to
earn your
earn your
business?
business. Yeah.
Exactly, right? It's like it's all you hear. And there's one guy in particular who, like, we use him. We use him a lot because he's
Mm,
priced competitively and his service
yeah.
has been fantastic. And he checks in weekly with us, right? And I flat out told him, and he checks in with some of our other people that we've referred him to, like more than that. And I've told him, I'm like, hey, I will call you. You're not missing anything here. Like I am giving you an opportunity on everything that we have, right?
Mhm.
So anyways, it's just kind of interesting how certain people do it. But
Sure.
I think that's a common misconception in our industry is like you again, like going back to like wanting to be relationship based. Part of the relationship is understanding when you're needed and understanding that when you get that time in front of your customer, making sure you're talking about the things that are adding value, right? And listening to where their problems are so you can interject yourself and say, hey, you
Mhm.
know, like if I'm sitting there listening to someone and they're saying they've got a giant backlog of service calls, we can help with that, right? And so I think that's a big piece of it, not just coming in and just spewing your, you know, giving your speech and then saying, "Okay, I'll see you the next time." It's really about dialing in that message.
Or the worst thing, not really having anything to say, but just
Yes,
showing up,
that's
right?
exactly right. Like
Right.
I can think of a couple vendors that would do that with us too, where they would show up and it was like they just literally show up to shoot the shit, and you're like, "Hey, I'm freaking busy right now.
Yeah.
I don't have time to just sit here and talk about how you went hunting last week and whatever else." Like I can understand that we want to be friends, and I get that, but like there's to a certain degree, right? Like there's
Mhm.
still work to be done.
Yeah, that's always the hardest thing is when you don't have the relationship with the customer and you're trying to build it,
Yeah.
and you're kinda on the outside looking in, is like, what is that happy medium of being present to try to create an opportunity, but not be annoying?
Yeah, exactly. I I really and I tell Tyler this all the time, and I've told other people, like, I do not view myself as a salesperson, and one of the
Mm,
hardest things for me, when I started Advanced Track was that piece of it. I knew, like, my mind is operationally focused. I can handle financial stuff, and I can handle the operation side of the business. I struggle on the sales side, and, because I don't I guess maybe because I've sat on the other side of the table and I don't wanna take up people's time. I don't wanna just show up, right?
mhm,
But it is necessary to a degree, right? And I
yeah,
think that's one thing I really appreciate about how Tyler handles things. Like he knows the cadence in which to, you know, reach out to people and he knows, hey, do I have 5 minutes? And he can kind of he's very good at reading the room. Like if he walks into someone's office, I've seen him before where he'll be able to tell very quickly, like, do I have 2 minutes or do I have 10 minutes? Right. And he'll be able to hone his message based on that. So I think it just takes that situational awareness
mhm,
from the salesperson to you know to know how best to approach each individual customer.
definitely, and it's something you learn over time. right?
Yeah.
And also as you become more confident in your ability, right? It's
Yeah.
all about the growth. Is there anything when you're sitting with that customer in Dallas, like helping them, is there anything that surprised you uh being immersed in it every day on the customer side?
I think what I realized, or what I was most surprised about was the level in which a lot of contractors don't understand their equipment, the cost of their equipment, and the impact that the decisions have on their fleet, right? And it's not of any, in my opinion, it's not of any fault of their own. It's just the
Sure.
reality of the industry. And it's, again, kind of going back to what we talked about, it's very relationship based. So if I have a relationship with a Volvo dealer versus a cat dealer, I'm going to buy from the Volvo dealer because
Mhm.
that's who I have the relationship with and who I feel like gives me the best service. Um, but it doesn't take into consideration all of the costs that go along with that, right? And so I think that was one thing that really surprised me. And it surprised me because at first I was like, "Is this normal?" And then that's when I started doing more research and finding out that absolutely it is, that there are a lot of contractors out there that, and don't get me wrong, there's some out there that they have this area of their business just dialed in, right?
Sure.
You're getting ready to go to AEMP. There's going to be a bunch of people there that represent contractors that have their stuff absolutely dialed in. But there is those small to mid-sized contractors that they don't have it dialed in. And I think that that was something that was surprising to me because I see it as such a huge investment, right? I see these huge costs. You talk about a 500 class excavator that costs $500,000, and you start
Mhm.
thinking about how much it costs to replace a final drive, or if you're not utilizing it to its correct application, there's going to be a lot of additional cost associated with that machine.
Okay, so when you're saying, they're they're kind of not putting the whole all the pieces together on the cost side, you're talking about like not managing the equipment, and it might lead to, or not taking care of the equipment, and it might lead to issues that cost a lot of money down the road. Is that what you're
I'm
kind
talking
of?
about that, and I'm also talking about them just understanding what their true, operational and maintenance costs are of that machine, right?
Oh,
So,
so
like,
there's like a
what's
lack
my
of
true cost
tracking.
per hour? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because a lot of those small to mid-sized contractors, they're not set up with charging every single hour to a specific job, right?
Mhm.
And they're not tracking utilization. Maybe they don't have telematics on the machine, so they
Mhm.
don't know how much that machine idled or how much it didn't run last week, right? So they may get themselves in a situation where not only are they maybe not utilizing that asset to its correct application, but they might be underutilizing that asset, and then they think they need another machine, and you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, totally. And I kind of go back to my dealer days a little bit.
Yeah,
There's because everybody likes talking about data. But I saw a huge problem with data where like we would get like an 80-page report on a machine. Like it was called a matrice report. And so yeah, data is great, but like a customer doesn't have time to read through 80 pages of data on a machine.
that's right.
When they
Yep,
own even if they own 50, if they own 100, some of these customers own a 2,000. So yeah, data is great, but you have to, and now I'm connecting dots too on where I think the fleet management piece has a lot of value if you can be someone who's like, look, I can, you know, boil this down to three actions, from
that's
the
right.
data that's available instead of like, dropping off this report from the machine.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I think that there's a lot of, and that's a Volvo product, right? And
Mhm.
Cat has theirs, and Deere
Same.
has theirs, and all of the manufacturers have their own uh, report for each machine. And then in addition to that, they've got all of these other reports that you can look at even before you buy the machine. But then it all depends on the application, like how much
Right.
fuel it burns, what am I doing with it, right? Am I loading trucks or am I digging ditches? Like there's all these different things that affect the operational expense. And so I think that it gets overwhelming for someone whose job every day is to either go put pipe in the ground or go build, and grade a building pad, right?
Mhm.
Like there's the last thing that they're thinking about is all of that additional work that's associated with the equipment. So
Mhm.
I think that's the piece that I'm talking about.
Yeah, I guess there seems to be a gap with, like, financial management, on the fleet management side, and it's no like, I think back once again to the dealer side, like, I think there's a big, issue on the dealer side and the service side of the business where you don't have a lot of financial managers either,
Yeah.
right? And so because a lot of the career progression is, like, starting as a mechanic, getting elevated as service manager, and, when you're managing a service operation, you have to be, um, paying attention to, like, efficiency and utilization. It's a lot of financial metrics, and there's not a lot of education or teaching on that side, of the business as well.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. And I want to be clear that it's not something that is a negative. Like, I really do
Sure.
believe that if their job is to put pipe in the ground
Mhm.
or to build a pad, right? But not like this is something that, to me, I think we can add value by
Mhm.
providing a service to them that they don't have to pay as much as like going and hiring someone who's got all these certifications behind their name and who, that wants to have complete control over everything. Because a lot of that's the other thing I learned is a lot of the owners of these construction businesses, they're the ones personally with the relationships with these dealers, right?
Mhm.
Like these are
Sure.
big assets, they're spending big dollars, they're the ones with the relationships, and they want to keep it that way.
Mhm.
And a lot of fleet managers don't, right? They want, well,
Sure.
hey, I want to bring in my guys or I want to do this, right? So
Mhm.
it's and there's a need to be respectful of that as well.
Yeah, completely. What are some of the key trends you've been in the industry 20 plus years? The trends today that you see.
Yeah, I think what we're seeing right now, and we kind of talked about this beforehand, but I think construction in general, it has been behind when it comes to technology. And over the course of the last 10 years, maybe even, I'd say maybe even less than that, maybe 5 years, it seems like there's been an influx of technical or technology solutions to problems that the construction industry has, right? And so I think that that has been something that it has been very interesting to watch unfold. And I
Mhm.
think now with the introduction of AI and AI becoming much more available to everyone. I really am excited to watch where that takes things because a lot of the things we just talked about with equipment management and so
Mhm.
forth, the more data and the more that AI continues to kind of build out its own portfolio of understanding with regards to equipment, I
Mhm.
think the better that tool will become to solving some of those issues. So I'm really excited to kind of watch that unfold.
Yeah, I think you're in the minority in the excitement. With technology, a lot of it is fear. Most people view it very fearfully, right? It's like because it's different, it's change. I don't think the industry is kind of behind the time. So it's nice talking to people who are looking at it in terms of the ways that it can solve problems and also help move kind of the ball forward. So I
Well,
agree with you.
I think a lot of that has to do with the age of the workforce in
Mhm.
construction, right? I mean, we talk about
Yeah.
this. I mean, it seems like we talk about it ad nauseum, right? Like the people problem that the construction industry has. I don't disagree. It's an aging workforce. It's something that needs to be addressed. But
Mhm.
how are we going to do that? And I think younger people that are at the helm of different companies, like they're looking for solutions when it comes to comes to their issues, right? And a lot of times, like, I mean, think about it. I mean, I grew up, um, I got my first cell phone in 2002 when I turned 16. And, now I walk around with a basically a tablet in my hand that can,
Mhm.
I can send emails, I can surf the web, I can do basically anything that my job requires, I can do from my phone. And so to me, the adoption of technology is what's critical. And I hear a lot of people talking about AI and the negative the negativity behind it, right? Like,
Right.
oh, I don't want to put my information into this system. It's like that system already has your information. Like, I'm
Sure.
I am sorry to break it to you, right? So what are you faced with now? you're faced with an opportunity to reject something, which eventually you're going to be in the minority of. And so why not adopt it and why not see how it can help you? Right.
Mhm.
I don't think that everything that it does is fantastic and
Sure.
and should be embraced. But I think there are a lot of things that AI provides opportunity for people to better understand their business, better understand their customer base, and to reduce their time spent on certain tasks that they can be more efficient doing what it is that actually makes their business money, right?
Completely agree. Where do you see some of the problems in the industry that technology can help solve?
I think for me, um, equipment management I think because I'm so close to that, I see a huge need for, and I know we've talked about this with just Heave as a
Mm,
solution, but as data becomes everything right now is very siloed when it comes to equipment, right? Like
mhm.
Cat has their costs and they know their stuff, but they
Right.
don't share it. And then Deere has theirs and Volvo has theirs, and all the manufacturers have their own information, but they don't share it. And
Mhm.
so as a fleet manager, it becomes extremely difficult to know, like, you have to do all the groundwork yourself. And that truly requires ownership of machines in order to build historical data to say,
Mhm.
hey, a 200 class excavator is going to cost me $125 an hour or whatever that number is, right?
Mhm.
But think about if there was a way for all of the companies to share that data, right? If I run Cat and you run Cabelco and someone else runs this other, another brand, think about if there was a way, and it doesn't have to say, Brian Peters Construction Equipment Company or rental company, whatever. It
Right.
doesn't have to say the person's name, but we can collect that data. To me, I think sharing that data amongst others is insanely valuable. And I think it could solve a lot of problems that the
Mhm.
industry has when it comes to equipment management. So I see that there. And then the other part of the problem that I see with technology right now, especially in the construction space, is that there isn't a lot of great options, but there's a lot of options, right? And a lot of the stuff that I see that gets pushed out there, it's like, what problem is it actually solving, right? Is this because you get these pitches all the time, and I'm sitting there scratching my head like I don't understand the problem that this is solving, right? Like to me, it sounds great. You want me to make an investment into this software that is going to do what though, right? And so I kind of struggle with that piece of it. Is that there is some tech out there that and it seems like contech is all the phrase, right, and the rage,
Mhm.
right, like construction technology, and I don't know. I struggle with it honestly. I do because I think that it's just a waste of people's time. I think that these technology companies that have come out and really are providing a solution, to me, that's where, those are the guys that are hitting it out of the park. And
Mhm.
and they're gonna see a huge ROI on their platform.
Yeah, I see the same thing. I wonder how many of the companies, the Contech companies, are started by someone with industry experience as opposed to technology background that just is looking for industries that need technology from the outside, like, oh, big dollars attached to it. Of course, we can come in and we can make things more efficient. We we lived the "Are we solving a problem?" debate for 2 years, from 2020 to 2022, with our first version of Heave, and it was we thought we were solving a problem, but at the end of the day, we kind of realized we weren't. It was more of an inconvenience, and the hard reality to that was you're not really solving a problem unless you have paying customers and customers that are
Mhm.
excited about what you're providing. Like one of the great quotes that I I think you probably would. This resonates with you, but when you start a company, like I never did more reading than when I started a company. It was constantly consuming information. I wanted to learn about other companies, how they started. I wanted to learn decisions, like key decisions, how certain companies, like you always get to a fork where it's like, do I go this way or do I go this way? And
Yeah.
one of the great quotes was like, when you're assessing what you're doing in the early days is, um, would customers be really bummed if you went out of it, if you didn't exist? And that was kind of the framework of what I used to make our decision to go this way instead of the path that we were on. Was I kind of came to the realization like no one would really care. And so that told me that we didn't really have anything yet. But now confidently I could say like if we went away, a lot of customers would be pissed or
Yeah.
really sad. So it's just really interesting. But we thought it was a problem. Really wasn't. It's hard.
Yeah, I that definitely resonates with me. I think that and I wonder the same thing. Like, are these context solutions that are out there? Is it some guy in Austin that has an idea about what he thinks technology should look like, or is he taking a or she taking a platform that worked in another industry and trying to model it or morph it into something that applies to construction?
Mm-hmm.
And then it seems like they always have someone on staff that has some type of construction background, right? And they're again, like they're trying to solve a problem that one contractor may have had,
Mm-hmm.
and not really looking at the industry as a whole. And I think the other thing is, because when I struggled at the beginning of the advanced track, like and it was about 18 months before we bought our first piece of equipment. And so for those 18 months, like I was battling kind of internally this desire of like, is it a dealership or should we pivot and start thinking about something very different? And one of the ideas that I had was like an equipment management solution, right? Is something that was cloud based, that wasn't one of these older antiquated systems. And the more that I kind of dove into those options, I found like the other thing about construction is, yes, it's a huge industry and there are a ton of contractors. I don't know the specifics on the exact number, but there are a lot of contractors across the country and across the world. And it's important to stay in frame that not every single one of those contractors, maybe not even 10% of those contractors could be a potential customer, right? And so I think that people jump into this space like there's all these fish, right? And we can
Mm-hmm.
we can just get after it, right? But that doesn't mean that the adoption is going to be there. And to your point earlier, especially with an aging workforce, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, you know, I see what you guys do, and I'm blown away by what he is accomplishing, and I love the solution. I'm sure there are still people out there that don't necessarily agree in everything that you guys are doing and maybe aren't
Sure.
adopting it yet, right? So,
Yeah.
I mean, even with someone that's literally saying like, "You have a people problem around a mechanics, and we're going to fix that for you," and people are like, no, I'm okay, I'm okay, I'm going to just keep doing it the way I'm doing it, right? So
Totally.
I think that's a bigger issue when it comes to that side of things that I don't think people give enough credit to.
What you just described is something very real. It's and it was a learning. I think everyone goes through it who starts a company, is that uh you're not for everyone, and then you have to define who your ideal customer is. And that's okay. And so then I would ask you, like, who is the ideal customer for Advanced Track?
For us, as I kind of mentioned earlier, that relationship piece of it is something that's very important to us, right? And so in order to have a relationship, there's got to be reciprocation there, right? If we're out there and we're trying to build a relationship with a contractor and all they see us as is someone who, they can beat up on rate and get the machine for a lower rate, like we're going to struggle in those situations.
Hmm.
Number one, we try to provide newer equipment. It's cost more to own. It's going to cost more to rent, right? But the idea is that you don't have as much downtime. We're not sending two machines so you can get one, right?
Hmm.
So for us, a contractor that values the fleet that we have, and then that also can see the entire solution. We look at our best customers. Our best customers see the value in each one of those revenue, those revenue sources for us, right? They see the
Hmm.
value in us being able to buy and sell, all the way down to helping them monitor their fleet. So I think for us, that's the ideal customer. And it's something that it's taken a while. And I'll be honest, like I would say probably 75% of our customers don't utilize every one of those avenues, right?
Sure.
But they know that it's there and they do see the value in it. But I mean, it's still hard, like we talked about earlier. It's hard to get
Mhm.
that adoption.
Completely. Well, I mean, you have to have an entry point first, and then over time you can expose to customers like all of the different things that you can do for them. What is the biggest challenge for you running Advanced Track?
I think our biggest challenge over the course of the last couple of years has been finding capital to grow, right? Like you can go out and get opportunities. You can bring a bunch of different rental opportunities to the table. Um, it's much more difficult to go secure the assets, right? Especially as a company that doesn't have a ton of history in credit wise, right?
Sure.
So that's been a huge hurdle for us. And then the other hurdle has been like knowing when to go and when not to go. And that's more of a me problem than it is like, I wouldn't say that's like necessarily a problem of advanced track. It's more of a me problem of like knowing, is it the right time to hire this person, or is it the right time to, do whatever, whatever big decision we have.
Mhm.
And so I think to me I've kind of gotten in my own way a little bit, and I've tried, specifically over the last couple of years, I've tried really hard to take a step back and make a quick decision, right? Not a quick, uninformed decision,
Sure.
but hey, I've got the data. I need to make a decision. Let's go. Versus me staying up all night trying to think about it from 18 different perspectives. And then the next thing you know, you overanalyzed it to the point where you walked yourself out of it, right? Or talked yourself out of it. And I don't, I'm trying really hard. I have to be diligent about it, but it's definitely something that I've had to, kind of get out of my own way a little bit because I was always told, you're too risk adverse to own your own business, right?
Mhm.
But I'm more comfortable with the risk because I have to be. And number two, like I've learned what my gut feeling is, and
Mhm.
I've learned to trust that, right? And there's been several things that have happened over the last 5 years that have kind of introduced that feeling and reintroduced it. And I'm like, okay,
Sure.
this is not, when we hired Tyler, for example, I was I was totally on board with hiring him, but I was nervous about it, right?
Sure.
But my gut knew like, hey, we don't know exactly how this is going to work, but we're going to figure it out, right? And then there's been other opportunities that have come along where it's like, nope, this is not the right thing. Like and it may check every single box, but my gut's telling me not to do it. I'm not going to do it, right? So it's just learning what that feeling is and what it feels like, and knowing to trust.
Yeah, and the more big decisions you make, you develop the experience, right? And
That's
then
right.
it's not as you don't get so bogged down into each individual decision. Do you have someone in your ecosystem that you bounce these decisions off of, or is it you just thinking through with your own frameworks and making the call?
I have a couple people that if it's that I will relay things to and just kind of gauge what their thoughts are on it. But at the end of the day, I try to know that like, hey, the person who has like my best interest is me. And
Sure.
I need to make those decisions, and feel confident in making those decisions. And so it's not to say that I wouldn't, I don't trust a mentor or anything like that. That's not what
Mhm.
I'm saying at all. I definitely have people that I trust, and will bounce ideas off of just to gauge, especially if it's something new where I'm like,
Mhm.
oh, that might be something to chase. Like, let me talk to a few guys, especially in the contracting world. Like, you're a contractor. What do you think? Right.
Right, right.
Um, but when it comes to making the bigger business decisions, like I try to make those decisions. And my wife is very involved in our business too. And so there's a lot of times where her and I'll collaborate and say, hey, let's do this.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's kind of my decision tree a little to a certain degree.
Any big mistakes, bad decisions that you've made that, I don't wanna say haunt, because I believe, that you learn most from mistakes, and I don't like to second guess, but, like, any, like, big ones that you made that didn't pan out, you're like, "Ah, I'm gonna file that one away," like, that's a good learning experience?
Yeah, I think when I first started, I tried, we talked a little bit earlier about sales. And I think when I first started, I tried very hard to like not be the overly annoying person. But what I realized is there's a certain degree of knowing the cadence, right? And there were opportunities that were presented to me that I didn't jump on fast enough, right?
Mhm.
And then there were other opportunities where it was like, oh, you're doing too much, right?
Mhm.
And I think I've filed those away and just realized like, okay, this is how we're going to get better and learn from these. And I think everyone's always afraid. I know I was for a long time, like afraid to admit those failures. And now, like when we don't get a deal, like we missed out on a really large package last year of consignment equipment. And I went back to the company and I said, hey, what did we do wrong? What do we need to improve on? Like what
Mhm.
gets us to the finish line next year or the year after when the next package is up? And I'm not afraid to ask for that feedback now.
Mhm.
So that's been a big thing. And then I would say like a specific example of something that I did is when in 2021 and 2022, when we first started kind of adding to the rental fleet, machine prices were insane, right?
Mhm.
I mean, it was post COVID. It was, or I guess middle of pandemic at that point. Um, but what we were seeing is just skyrocketing equipment prices. And there were certain things that I probably should have stayed away from. But I went out and I did it anyways. And so we got ourselves into some financing that's not the most favorable terms. But the reality is we're here and we wouldn't have a business without them. And to your point, like I do look back on those things. It's like, hey, every blip on the radar has all led to right here. And it's
Mhm.
all given me the strength to be able to and the knowledge to be able to know what to do the next time, right? And so I wouldn't trade those, but looking back, I might give them this maybe a second or third look.
Yeah, I mean, I'll share with you, like, one of the biggest mistakes that I've kind of filed away for future was when we first started, um, we over designed our product. Like, and I think it was I think there's positives and negatives to everything. You know, positives of starting a business in the industry, I had the experience. Negatives was I had the experience and I was too particular about what the initial product had to be when we went to market. And you know, when you do a lot of research with technology companies, they call it a MVP. They call it a
Yeah.
minimal viable product for a reason. You know,
Yep.
because the most important thing is getting it in the hands of users and seeing how they use it, how they react to the product. And we over designed it, and I probably wasted months and lots of dollars, but I wanted it to look a certain way. And so it's helped me, like, in the future, where, like, if we're rolling out a new feature or we're making a change to our app or our website, it's like, all right, let's not, let's get it out. Let's see how people respond to it, and then we can always tweak it or build upon it. So it's like, I wouldn't have learned that without making the mistake. So it
Yep.
was a good mistake. But yeah, you just have to. It's so important to be in the trenches
Yeah.
with customers, and so you're not getting things second and third hand, and that allows you to be flexible if you're paying attention.
Yeah. Certainly. Certainly.
Um, is there anything I asked you about this when you were on the customer side? You know, you had experience in the rental industry, your family has experience. Is there anything that surprised you with owning your own rental company?
Um, I think that we all try to sell service, right? Like all of these different rental companies, like you know, they all talk about like the best value and the value proposition is service, right? Or we're going
Hmm.
to respond quickly and we're going to do, whatever. Um, and I feel like it's hard to get customers on board with that because I know why we want to sell that, right? Like we want
Yeah.
to sell it so that we can charge more for machines, right?
Hmm.
But the reality is that when everyone in the market is selling the same exact thing, you end up just cutting your pricing, right? So
Hmm.
it works completely the opposite, right?
Yep.
It's almost like that's an expectation at this point, right? Like it's expected that if you rent a machine, that it's going to work, and if it doesn't work, you're going to get someone out there as soon as possible, right?
Hmm.
Because inevitably it's gonna, there's gonna be a problem, right? Whether
Right.
it's something that you do or something that your customer does, like there's gonna
Sure.
be an issue that needs to be addressed. So I think that was kind of a big surprise is just as I did research, because a lot of times, like when to your point before, like when you are in the trenches every single day and you're not paying attention to like, hey, what's your customer's website say? Hey, what does or not your customers, I'm sorry, your competitor's website say?
Mhm.
And what is their sales tactics and so on and so forth. Like it when you're not completely in tune with those, you are kind of stuck in your world selling what you think is the magic, the magic
Mhm.
wand, right? In all reality is when your customer or your competitors have that same magic wand, you're not really gaining anything and it becomes a price game. And I think that's the hardest thing with the rental side is in my opinion, we talked about what our ideal customer looks like. For
Mhm.
us, it's someone that is not like low price driven.
Yeah.
But it becomes very difficult when your best customers who want to use you, they get a price that's 10% or 15% below where you're at. It
Right.
becomes very difficult for them to go, "Hey, I understand that I understand your vision and what you're trying to offer and so on, and I'm bought in. But this guy's 15% lower than you on rate, And so there is a certain commoditized reality that we all face
Mhm.
as independent dealers. And I think that we can sit back and lie to ourselves that, oh no, we provide value and we do this, that, and the
Mhm.
other. But the stark reality is from, some to the best customers to the worst customers is price is you will never be able to get 15 or 20% more on your rental rate because you provide a better service or a service. Like
Yeah, it's
everyone provides
expected.
that. It's expected.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's a very interesting discussion topic because I would tell you that it's not just rental. It's also
Mhm.
applies to dealers. And having worked at a dealership, I think I can make this critique. I think it's a big mistake. But it's human nature. Human nature wants to copy the leader, the industry leader, and I
That's
think
right.
a huge mistake that all dealers make is that they look to Cat and they try to copy everything that they do. But the problem is, and say this from working at a Volvo dealer, you don't have any of the things that the Cat dealer has. You don't have as much parts in stock. You don't have as many machines. You don't have as many people. You don't have as many technicians. You don't have, and so but it takes a lot of courage and smarts to really try to, like, you know what? You don't want to just seed the market to them, but dealers, I think it would be a wiser approach if they really identified a different ideal customer and tried to own certain markets. Like, I think if you're a compact dealer specifically, like, that's a good thing because you have a niche. This is who our customer is. They own compact, or like I've seen certain like road machinery dealers. They just know paving, and that's
Yep.
what they do. And I see that that's a huge reason for their success. And I think that's a big it's a big problem um, when you just try to copy the market leader.
I totally agree with that. And I think that that's something that's why we're trying to differentiate ourselves with these different offerings. Like I think a lot of people look at us and they're like, "You're insane. That's way too much for you to do."
Hmm.
But the reality is like, okay, I don't want to be sitting out here. Like we have a competitor of ours in the rental space that they will go out to a job site and they will see a rental piece of equipment and they'll walk up to the person on site and they will say, "Hey, whatever you're paying for that, I will cut the rate by 5% and I'll haul our machine in and haul that machine back to the other rental company's place on my dime." Like that's how people are getting work. It's very difficult to
Hmm.
compete with that when there's no sense of a relationship. When they see you purely as just an equipment rental company, that's your only source of revenue, right?
Yeah.
And that being able to cut that cost is expected. Now we look at opportunities on the rental side from kind of through a different lens, right? Like we're going to look at that entire customer, like not just, hey, what's the job duration or hey, what's our relationship with this customer, but how well do they pay us, right? How
Hmm.
well, how big of a customer are they? What's our exposure, right? There's certain highway contractors here in Texas that, when you do business with them, they don't sign your rental agreement, you sign theirs, right? And their
Yes.
rental agreement dictates certain terms. And it's like, okay, well, are those terms that I want to accept and am willing to accept? Well, when I've got a machine that's sitting on the side of the freeway and we've got 4 or 5 phone calls just because that machine is there, it's like, okay, well, maybe
Mhm.
it makes sense to absorb some of that risk that, they've pushed back onto us, right? So
Yeah.
I say all that to say that it's not like we really try to take it, each deal as, under consideration, as its own deal, right? And not try to say this is the only way that we do business and the only way that we ever will do business, right? We try to be
Mhm.
flexible. And if we have a customer who pays us in net 20, like we are gonna, if they call and say, hey, we've got to be extra aggressive on this job. Can you give us 5% or something like that? It's gonna be like, absolutely. We would love
Mhm.
to do that for someone who sees the value in us, pays us very well, right? Like those are decisions that we'll make as a company, together, as a team together. But it is a very frustrating game out there, and if there's nothing to differentiate yourself, and all you're trying to do is copy the next person, like it's not going to work long term.
No. Yeah, that's, the cost-cutting game, it only lasts so long.
That's
Uh,
true.
is there anything that you've changed your mind on in the last couple of years? Any, any big topics just from
Uh,
experience?
for me, I would say one of the big things that I wouldn't say like I necessarily changed my mind to, but I kind of got exposed to was in probably the tail end of 2019 and beginning of 2020. Like right as actually we were thinking of advanced track and starting on our own and all this. I really saw that my mental health and physical health was something that I needed to prioritize. And I realized that those those 2 things allow you to be strong for your family. They allow you to be strong for your business and eventually your team. And it wasn't something that I never it was just something that I never really prioritized, and I never really saw a need for it. I kinda
Mhm.
thought that a lot of the, self-improvement, self-help stuff was a little bit of smoke and mirrors. And don't get me wrong, there are some people out there selling snake oil,
Sure.
but a lot of the stuff with regards to our mental health and our physical health, like, it translates. It
Mhm.
absolutely translates, and it allows us to weather some of these storms that, are that inevitably come our way. And so that's been a big change for me. I'm always reading something, it seems like, or watching some content on, whatever it looks like as far as, what I'm trying to solve, a problem I might be trying to solve. I'm just continuously trying to improve and better myself. And, I get it wrong several times. Like I'm
Sure.
human. I'm gonna make mistakes. And extending myself some grace there has been a big piece of that too.
So you didn't necessarily prioritize, like, healthier habits in the past?
No, no, I had never played team sports. I was never in the gym. I mean, I would go to the gym like every now and again.
Mhm.
But it was never like physical health was just nothing I really prioritized.
Mhm.
And I kind of got to the point where I was like, okay, like I know that I need to do something because what
Mhm.
I'm doing obviously isn't working. Um, but I didn't realize the effect that physical health would have on my mental health.
Mhm.
It's a piece, it's clarity really. Like when
Sure.
you're waking up and you hit the gym or go for a walk or whatever level of physical activity you determine to do. But you're kind of opening your mind and allowing yourself to see things through a different lens. And I think that is extremely powerful.
I couldn't agree more. It keeps me from yelling at people too
Yes.
during the
Yes.
day.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, something that I wanted to ask you is, let's fast forward like 5 to 10 years. Let's say all these things go right for you in advanced track. What does that look like?
I think it was funny. Someone asked me this yesterday, actually, and
Damn
I
it.
I I know, I know. Well, I'm gonna give you the same answer I gave them, and that is like it's hard for me to see that far down the road. And I think the hard thing for us is ideally, I would love to sit here and be like, yeah, we have 1,000 machines in 10 locations and a workforce of 150 or whatever that looks like, right? Or we're, getting ready to, fold this thing up into an ESOP or something. I don't know. I mean, it would be great to say all those things, but the reality is like, I don't know what the market is going to allow for us. And I think part of that is us going out and proving ourselves, and we're still doing that, and it's
Mhm,
such a stage of infancy for us that it's hard for me to kind of see past the next year. So we're trying to get better at that, so that we can have more of a long-term vision.
mhm,
But one thing I have settled with is I don't I used to care about a machine count. I used to care about, how big the employee head count was. I used to care about all those things. And now I'm of the mindset of like, I just want to have great relationships with our customers. And if that means we have 40 machines and 40 customers, or, 50 machines and 1,000 customers, whatever it looks like, that's kind of what I'm more hyper focused on now, is really dialing in that ideal customer profile and knowing that the business is going to grow in which those customers allow us to grow.
mhm.
I don't ever want to catch ourselves in a position where we have 1,000 machines and I have to go rent to the guy down the street who doesn't pay his bills but every 150 days.
Sure.
We can't afford to do business like that. So I don't want to be dead set on like some number, right?
Mhm.
But ideally, I mean, 5 to 10 years from now, 5 years from now, I hope we're kind of on the trajectory to the 10-year goal, which to me would be like have a thriving business that we could, potentially either sell or, continue building, or, sell to our employees, something like that. I don't know exactly what, that looks like yet, but that's kind of where our minds are at.
Well, I think that's healthy. I think it's healthy to have just a focus on, every day getting a little better, instead of, looking out too far. One thing that just popped into my mind that I remember back from the dealer days that I always thought, recognized was so difficult on the rental side. I wanted to get your input on um, is inventory. It is so hard, to manage. And how do you handle, because you have relationship with customers, when you don't have the piece that they need? Because I think customers, they only allow a certain few times when you don't have it, and then they stop calling.
Yeah.
So how do you balance that?
So we talked about it earlier, but we have some good relationships with some wholesale rental companies that they strictly only rent to re-rental, or they only re-rent their equipment to rental companies.
Okay.
And we've been fairly strategic with our fleet growth, that we offer the machines, or we try to carry the machines that they don't carry, right? So in this instance, they carry a lot of wheel loaders, they carry a lot of excavators. So for me, and it's a reputable brand. It's not
Mhm.
like we're getting, junky equipment out there. It's
Sure.
a reputable brand that most people are going to be perfectly fine having on their job sites. And so for us, it's been more, they don't carry motor graders, they don't carry dozers, they don't carry some of the other lines, the compaction equipment and so forth. So for
Mhm.
us, we put more of our eggs into those different inventory classes, so that we can offer those to our customers when, we can't get some of those other machines. Now we still have excavators, we still have wheel loaders,
Sure.
right? But that's kind of the strategy behind it for us with regards to inventory.
That
And
makes
we're
sense.
trying we're trying to take a different approach, that maybe like more dealer approach is, like, we want to make sure that our customers know that if they rent a machine from us, obviously we can't do this on a re-rented machine, but for if it's a machine that we own and they're interested in purchasing that machine, then we can explore RPOs and
Mhm.
all that kind of stuff. Because I've come to see some of our competition that they offer programs like that.
Mhm.
It's not something that I've ever been, exposed to from the dealer's perspective, like as a dealer. But I think I see a huge demand for it, because there's so many contractors that's how they like to procure equipment. They
Mhm.
really like the RPO mindset. They like to expense that rental on a job,
Mhm.
buy down the purchase price, and then it lives on their books at a lesser rate. So I definitely think there's advantages to that approach, and that's something that we're trying to. But to your point, it makes managing inventory very difficult, because if
Mhm.
I only have two, when I tell you we have a fleet of 22 machines, it's not like I have 21 size dozer class, right? So if I go out and I RPO one of those machines, then I got to be looking for the replacement, right?
Mhm.
So it presents a little bit of an issue as far, especially with access to capital as tight as it is.
Mhm.
But that's kind of how we're approaching it now.
Makes sense. It was always something. The inventory was, you were never right
Yeah.
at the dealership, right? It's either you have too much or not enough, and then you're kicking yourself for not having enough. But and it's so capital intensive. Like that is I
Yep.
understand that challenge well. But
And as a new company, the other big thing is like a lot of those large dealers, they can get floor plan deals from
Mhm.
their, from the
Yeah,
OEM.
subsidized by the
Um,
OEM.
exactly. And so for us, we don't have that type of financing available to us. So it makes it challenging.
Sure.
That is like I said earlier, that's one of our biggest hurdles that we have to clear.
Yeah, understood. Well, Brian, I appreciate your time. And it's been great to catch up, and I've enjoyed, seeing your growth from when you started it. We started basically the same month, July of 2020.
Yeah.
So it's been cool to see your journey, and we'll follow along and be rooting for you.
Likewise, man. I'm hoping nothing but the best for y'all, and thanks for having me on. I really
Yep.
appreciate it, and we'll have to do it again.
Thanks. We'll do.